want to ask you a question, and I would like you to actually try to answer it before I say anything else. What were you saved for? Not what you were saved from. Most of us can answer that one in a second. What are you saved for? If you found yourself pausing there, you are in very good company. And this video is going to be worth your time because there is half of the gospel most of us were never handed, and living without it will quietly exhaust you. This is coming from someone who could have told you exactly what I was saved from and had no idea what I was saved for. So let's get into it. Hi there. If this is your first time to this channel, I'm Pietru and this is Truth Walk, where we talk about practical faith for real people. A quick catch up if you were joining us now. We started a video series and started with Romans 7. If you haven't watched the previous videos, please go back and watch them. We started Romans 7 and why trying harder never works. Then the next video was about Romans 6 and the right order, identity before obedience. Then the next video was Romans 8 and the person of the Holy Spirit who does the work with you. Today we ask the question underneath all of it, what was God actually after? So back to the question I opened with. If you had stopped me at any point in those 20 years and asked me what I was saved for, I would have answered without hesitation, I was saved from my sin. And that answer is true. It wasn't wrong, but notice what happened. You asked me what I was saved for, and I answered what I was saved from. I did not even hear the difference in the question. I knew the from half. Nobody had ever given me the for half. And I didn't know what I was missing and that I was missing anything. Here is why that matters more than it sounds. If all you have is the from half, your faith becomes damage control. Think about what that actually looks like day to day. You are avoiding sin. You are staying out of trouble. You are trying not to slip. Every measure of how you are doing is a measure of what you have not done. And you can go years like that without ever asking what you are moving towards, because it never occurs to you that there is anything to move towards. That is the scoreboard again. It has just changed its clothes, and a life spent avoiding things is a life with no forward motion in it. It is very tiring, and it produces very tired Christians, and I was one of them. So let's go and find the for half, and we are going to start further back than you might expect. Go to the beginning. Before there is any sin in the story at all, God makes people in His own image and He gives them something to do. There is a purpose in place on the first pages, and there is no sin anywhere in sight yet. Hold on to that because it changes the shape of everything. God's purpose was not a response to sin. It was there before sin was. Then sin enters and it interrupts that purpose. It does not cancel it. It gets in the way of it. Now come forward to Romans 8, the chapter we were in last time. Paul says that those God foreknew, He also predestined to be conformed to the image of His Son. Now I'm deliberately going to leave the first half of that sentence alone. There's a serious and old argument about what foreknew and predestined means. Good people disagree about it, and it deserves its own video rather than a rushed paragraph here. What I want is the back half. Conformed to the image of His Son. That is the for. That is what you were saved for. Not so that your record could be cleared and then nothing further. so that you would be made into the likeness of Jesus, so that there would be a family of people who carry the life of God and look like Him. So, what was the cross doing then? This is the part that reordered my whole understanding. Forgiveness was not the goal. Forgiveness cleared the road. There was an obstacle in the way of what God had always intended, and that obstacle was real and enormous, and there was nothing you can do about it. The cross removed it. That is not a small thing, and I'm not reducing it. But removing an obstacle is not the same as arriving somewhere. Imagine a road washed out by a flood. An enormous work goes into rebuilding it. That work is genuine and costly and worth celebrating. But nobody rebuilds a road so that the road can sit there. They rebuild it because there is somewhere people were always meant to be going. Most of us stopped at the rebuild road and called it the whole gospel. We stood there being grateful that it was possible, and we never once drove down it. Here is how I know this is not just a nice illustration. Look at what happens to a person who only has the from half. They cannot understand why they still feel restless after being forgiven, because forgiveness was supposed to be the finish line, and they crossed that years ago. They measure their walk by sins avoided because there is nothing else to measure. They find the Christian life slightly boring and then feel guilty for finding it boring, which adds another item to the scoreboard. And they have no answer at all for the question of what their ordinary Tuesday is for. I lived every one of those, and none of them were fixed by trying harder to be grateful. So what actually changes when the fore half arrives? The first thing that changes is what your struggles are for. If the goal is a clean record, then every failure is a stain and every season is a setback. But if the goal is being made into the likeness of Jesus, then the hard things are not interruptions to the process. They are frequently where the process happens. I want to be careful with this because it gets abused. This does not mean God sends you suffering to shape you, and it does not mean every terrible thing has a tidy purpose behind it. Some things are simply awful, and no meaning gets attached to them, but it does not mean that a life aimed at becoming like Christ can make use of things that a life aimed at staying out of trouble can only survive. The second thing that changes is what obedience is for. In the from only version, obedience is how you stay clean. It is defensive. In the for version, obedience is how a person who is being remade actually lives. It is not maintenance, it is growth. And the third thing that changes is the size of the story you are in. You are not a person with a cleared record waiting around for heaven. You are part of something God has been working towards since before there was anything wrong. That is a much larger thing to belong to, and it has room in it for a Tuesday. So let's make this practical. Two things change. First, what changes in how you think? Stop treating forgiveness as the finish line. It is the starting line, and if you have been standing on it for 20 years wondering why nothing is happening, that is why. Second, what to do this week? Answer the question properly in writing. Sit down and finish this sentence. God saved me for ... Do not write what you were saved from. If you catch yourself writing from, stop and start again. That correction is the whole exercise, and it is harder than it sounds. Then look at the ordinary part of your week, your work, your family, the drive somewhere, and ask what being remade into the likeness of Jesus would look like right there. Not in a dramatic way, in that specific, unglamorous place. One caution before I close. None of this makes forgiveness small. If you have been carrying guilt, the cross is exactly where you take it, and it is genuinely dealing with that. What I am saying is that it does not stop there. And stopping there is why so many forgiven people are just so tired. So here is where I want to leave you. You were not saved so that a record could be cleared and nothing else. You were saved so that you would be remade into the likeness of Jesus. And that purpose was in place before anything ever went wrong. You already know what you were saved from. It is time you knew what you were saved for. Now, there is something in that answer that most of us find harder than we expect, because being remade means something in us has to go. And that is where we are going in the next video. Thank you for watching. I hope you'll find more videos on this channel helpful. God bless.